AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Falling Skies after show here on AFTERBUZZ TV. We're getting real close. We're one episode away, but we've got this episode to talk about before we get to the finale. Of course, it is called Reunion. I think for the reason that we got Lexi back and we got Pope back. So, you know, aptly titled with Reunion. So a lot to discuss. But let's open things up with young Ben. Ben's really kind of taking the risk, and that's where we really start to open it up. We kind of see this Inception-like bathtub with Ben inside, and as he comes and he becomes conscious again, and he's writing things down. You know, she is here. Assembly has begun, and we learn that it's the Queen, and so. You know, they made mention of it right off the top. You know, maybe they're luring us into a checkmate, and very much so. You know, when you kind of have these various things right in chess, the Queen is a very powerful figure, and she can do a lot. But you know, you don't want to lose her necessarily. But of course, you're willing to give up the Queen in order to save the King and win the ultimate chess match. So we'll see kind of. You know, that's kind of a slight prediction, but I think ultimately the Queen is the primary objective. I don't think we have time to really switch things up too much. Overall, you know, I kind of liked Ben's storyline in this one where he's just so determined. Each of the Masons has kind of gone rogue in their own way, with perhaps the exception of Hal to a degree. But they want to win this war, and they're willing to do whatever sacrifices that need to be done in order to achieve that. And Ben is certainly showing that in this episode. I really love the conversation with him and Maggie, where they talked about, you know, when you gave up your spikes, that was a choice, and you would have done anything to remove them. Well, this is something that I'm willing to do anything to get information on. So we get a lot of various information. Obviously, it kind of merges in with the storyline of Lexi and all of that. But all in all, I like how no one really knows that Ben is actually doing this, even though Anne tells him specifically not to. And granted, they've all got various things going on, but you would think that perhaps they would lock the Schwenny communication satellite, whatever we're going to call it, yeah, and that way Ben couldn't have access to it, but he did, and he was able to continue on with the experiments. And so, you know, not that it needs full repeating, but you know, the message of tonight: she is here, assembly has begun. Then let's see, the shadow plane and Dad, and the at the foot of the giant, right? So, you know, the foot of the giant, obviously, eventually, as we find out, referring to the Lincoln Memorial. So that's where we're headed kind of next episode, or at least we were, before the full events of this episode prevent us, or at least hinder us from going there. But let's take a quick step back. As you know, Ben's overall storyline, while very good, you know, not fully too much to discuss there, except with the exception of I also did forget that he had that conversation with Lexi, you know, which overall, what's nice to see about that, and I will get into Lexi a little bit more, but each of the Masons has their moment with Lexi, or at least how they deal with it, even though Hal, you know, didn't specifically talk to Lexi directly. He had his own feelings about the matter and how he was going to deal with it. And, you know, Ben was kind of somewhere in the middle between Hal and Ben. Hal and Matt. And so when Ben kind of is there with Lexi and he's kind of talking with her, you know, overall overall he makes his decision and all that, but I like the whole speech about forgiveness and everything like that he had. So before I continue, I do want to say obviously Lauren LaGrasso is not here today. She is in Michigan, out on doing what she does, which is music, which is a lot of different things. And so feel free to support her. You guys should know her Twitter by now. It's at @low grow, 3 lows and grow. So be sure to follow her there. And she will return for the finale. I am a little bit sad, unfortunately, that she could not be here for today's episode because obviously there's so much to discuss. There's so much speculation going into the finale. But that's where you at home certainly pick up the pieces. You tweeted us, you write in the comments section. There's a lot to discuss. And even though I personally am not always great at responding to those comments, I do read them. I try to read as many of them as I can. And you guys have a lot of great opinions, and so that's how we'll treat this overall episode. I'm going to give you my interpretation of it, and you guys continue that conversation, and we'll carry it until the season finale, and then after the season finale, we'll have a lot to discuss there. Okay, so speaking of kind of minor storylines, we'll see where this fully goes and develops, but it was nice to see in terms of Matt, his storyline with Evelyn. I didn't think that we'd get her back, although very brief. She's out on patrol. She's doing her thing. And they have that nice moment between her and Matt of kind of, obviously they're both very, very young, but to spark an interest, kind of develop what could eventually down the line be a serious relationship. And again, they're still way too young and there's still a lot going on, and that's why I like the way that they played it. Unlike, let's say, a Hal and Maggie storyline, this didn't need that much exploration. It was just enough to kind of say, you know what, Matt's got his own thing, and he's slowly becoming a great, responsible human being. Despite his age, he's certainly brought a lot to the table. And, that conversation that he has with Maggie about, in the New World Order, is there room for amnesty? I thought that was a great little conversation to be had by Maggie with Matt in particular, because we've never seen how that really affected Matt. And to a degree, we still don't know because he was kind of overall quiet. But I felt at the very least they came up to the same page. And, I think ultimately he forgave her in those moments. There's no reason to certainly hold a grudge, and that's never been Matt's MO, definitely. So I thought that was a great little moment. The one thing that I in particular am most uncertain about is this whole Peru thing. I know there's a lot of significance there. I know that's where the aliens, quote unquote, landed years ago, so on and so forth. I don't know the history of that in terms of the symbolism, in terms of the religious beliefs there. But, that's where I'm hoping you guys can kind of fill the void there and really help it out. Because I am curious. Obviously there's a lot of significance there, and I don't know if we'll have time to fully explore that. I mean, all in all, for the season finale, I think we just kind of have to get to the end of the war, and that'll be enough. I don't know if we will fully get all the answers that we want, but we'll get the answers that we need. And not ironically, but still, up until this point, we're still getting more and more questions posed. So, Peru in particular, right? That's brought up with the Dornia. Matt is sort of the conduit, and I was really worried about Matt for a variety of reasons because, he's the vision that gets Tom to go to the beach to get the weapon that he needs. But typically, whenever we've seen that in the past, it symbolizes something bad for that particular individual, and so I was very nervous and scared for Matt. It hasn't worked out that way, so I'm glad. Instead, what ends up happening is obviously Tom goes to the beach, and the ship comes. Many of his, more information is revealed to him, and he gets the weapon that he needs to take to Washington, D.C. And, that's where a lot of doubt comes with Lexi of, for Tom, because Dornier say, hey, the weapons that, they're always very calculated about how they use things, and so perhaps Lexi was sent back, as Rebecca says to Tom, we saved you, and so she was very direct in saying that, like, that they are the ones responsible for Tom Mason being alive, and you know what, if they're responsible for that, maybe they had Lexi all along, and that's what certainly Tom thinks. Now, before Lexi even enters into any of this, it's Matt and Maggie, M&M, who find Lexi in the woods, and she's kind of there. Very strange. Maggie certainly, she wants nothing to do with it right off the bat. Matt, completely different. I think he's channeling his inner Tom Mason of amnesty and that, and perhaps it could be because of that speech. And I'm surprised that Matt perhaps didn't use it more against Maggie of like, hey, you know what? If you were just talking about amnesty, maybe there is amnesty here. But obviously, bringing Lexi back hugely affected the entire base camp. I mean, so many things are coming together, right? So many little pieces in the episode happen that sometimes, especially for me solo, it's going to be hard to get into every specific, but the larger communication, right? We've expanded the network, and that's without the Vulm. And so that's a positive. We're a day away. We're 1 day away from attacking Washington, D.C. and really turning the tide here. So that's a positive. But as this is more towards the end of the episode. But as Colonel Weaver says, they're attacking the head of the snake, but the Ishveni want to do the same thing, and so that's where Lexi comes in. She's the plant, much like the captain was last episode, or the past two episodes certainly. But it certainly brings a lot of doubt, and I like how they played it, and with how Anne was very much not opposed to, but just didn't believe in Lexi. It was Tom who had to be the one because, call it the Ishveni were banking on mother's instinct, perhaps, whatever the case may be. Obviously, Anne has such a history with Lexi, and so there's so much sorrow there, and the goodbyes that they did share were very painful for Anne, and so I can understand why she would be skeptical to begin with, even if it was Lexi. She doesn't want to introduce that idea, and so there's any doubt, then she wouldn't have wanted to introduce it, which, speaking of the larger communications, now every one of these soldiers, and we're only getting overall the Mason's perspective and a little bit of Colonel Weaver and obviously Maggie and our main characters, but the idea of doubt is going to sink in more than ever. And when Tom gives that speech, yes, he's saying it to himself, but he's saying it to the people, but ultimately I do think he's saying it more for himself. And that is the reaction. When we kind of open up the episode, I wasn't really grasping at what that doubt could fully mean for not only the Second Mass, but for any individual in this war. But it's going to mean a lot, and if you're the Mason militia, you have to really take this leap of faith in Tom Mason, right? And now you just even the fact alone, you have this guy getting on the radio saying he's Tom Mason. What if it wasn't Tom Mason, right? There's so much doubt that can happen, so many pieces that have to come together for this to work, and luckily they are. But the things that could unfoil it are certainly great as well, and decisions have to be ultimately made, and one of the great scenes of tonight's episode was between Hal and Tom, where they're having the talk of like, go with your gut, that Tom doesn't know how to read people. He thought he knew the good, the bad. And you know what? He still overall did. Anthony had a turn, and that's where I think the the thing that will go a little bit underrated in tonight's episode is the amnesty speech between Maggie and Matt, because Colonel Weaver provides amnesty. He provides exactly that to Anthony, and even though he doesn't say it exactly like that, he says, you will get your chance. You'll be part of the flank when I say you're ready, type of thing, and that doesn't need any translation for Anthony. Anthony 100% understands what that means from Colonel Weaver, and maybe they will have a sentimental moment, down the line, perhaps not in the actual show, but as actual human beings, or characters rather, then, that's how they'll do it. But now, for now, that was enough. And go with his gut. I don't know ultimately what was in Tom's gut, but he certainly tested the waters and was questioning everything. Sending off the guards that were there, perhaps not the smartest idea, but he needed to get a little bit more personal to really find out. And Lexi just kept spilling too much, and the Ishveni, not the Ishveni, the weapon against the Ishveni obviously paid off. A lot of things came together in those moments when Tom was saved, and a lot, I think, came to Tom of how he really should deal with the Ishveni, and the fact that nothing should be underestimated, and that what they are doing, it's very much high risk, high reward type situation, and unfortunately, Lexi is that. But however, what ultimately I think also comes of this is that Lexi was able to communicate back to the Ishveni that this is where Tom Mason is, which is why the end of the episode leaves off the way it does. I think is directly because of Lexi. So while Tom is, prodding his son of, if it wasn't for you, Matt, we wouldn't have gotten this information about, the foot of the giant, i.e. the Lincoln Memorial. It's kind of 50-50. It's you got that information, but at what cost? So we'll ultimately see. But it was good to see the actress that plays Lexi back. I thought she played it very well. I'm glad kind of Colonel Weaver was able to use the knowledge that he's obviously gained with the captain to now kind of be able to make his own judgments, and he sees the pain that is in Anne's eyes, and he was able to get to her, or through to her. Obviously not initially to Tom, but such as such. So before we get into kind of Pope and everything else, I do want to talk about the weapon in general. But even before that, I want to let you guys know, our time as Falling Skies is coming to a close. But certainly that doesn't mean that our relationship has to end, yours and mine, as a fan. I do many shows here at AFTERBUZZ TV, as does Lauren. And in fact, even in general, if there's other TV shows that you like, we probably cover them. We cover a lot of them. Not necessarily all of them. We do get some complaints that we don't cover every single last one of them. There's just so much TV out there, and there's so much good TV out there that it does become a little bit tough to cover every single thing. But we try. We do about 90 to 100 shows every single week, so that's got to count for something. But definitely check those out. For TNT, their new show coming out Tuesday night, Public Morals. That'll be a great show. I'm in fact doing the after show for that. So if you like TNT, if you like me, we're going to be doing that show not necessarily on Tuesday. We're going to be doing it Thursday nights at 9 p.m. So 2 days after it actually airs. That'll give us a little bit of time to digest it. It'll give you guys a little bit of time to digest it, and we can have a quality conversation about that. So that'll be fun. That's something to look forward to. But now's your chance to also leave some great comments, on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on YouTube. As I mentioned, now's the time to be predicting stuff. And also, it'll be fun down the line once this is over to see how new people get introduced to this series when they watch it. Hopefully, they obviously, the goal is they listen to us as they watch the series. And it'll be interesting, kind of, perhaps a time capsule later on where we can revisit all our theories and be like, how silly were those theories now, knowing what we know. So definitely do that. And one last thing before I get back to the story. Football season is coming up, and so if you like football, I'm sure you're into fantasy football. That makes the experience even more fun. We have a great. We're working in tandem with DraftKings, so if you like fantasy football, I recommend DraftKings to you guys because instead of doing a season-long fantasy league, this is on a day-to-day, game by game type thing. So it makes it that much faster. So that way, if all of a sudden your team goes bad or whatever, you're not stuck with them for the rest of the season. You're like, it's not even worth playing. No, this is much more quicker, and therefore. Through DraftKings, you have the ability to win some good money. And so if you go to DraftKings.com, give them a try and use the promo code BUZZ, B-U-Z-Z. That way they know that you were referred to them by us, and you get some bonus points. So definitely check that out if you like fantasy football or just any fantasy type sport. All right, back to the storyline. So. The weapon. It's this, I call it kind of like a jack-in-the-box, not quite that. It's almost one of those, what do you call them? The pulsers, the stun guns almost, right? It just kind of shoots out. And in this instance, it doesn't stun you, it kills you. And through Anne, and I really I like how they get all of the characters that even seem kind of fringe at the time, they get those guys involved and kind of give them something to do, give them a storyline. And in this instance, that's Marty, who's apparently a biochemist. He worked in a distillery, and to be a really good brewmaster, you got to know some chemistry. You do, and it's not just about here's some beer. There's a whole science to it, and the fact that he was able to use that knowledge, which. I've kind of hit this throughout the past episodes, but this isn't about just, as much as Tom Mason said, we all have to be warriors, and forget that we were doctors, lawyers, dentists, this and that. No, I think one of the things that's very much saving them and saving their humanity to themselves, but also in the war, is the fact that they are... They have these qualities from their past lives, and they are able to tap into them. Dingung is very, he's great with electronics, electricity, now Anne's obviously been an amazing doctor / medic, and Marty being a biochemist, he's able to really help her out, and they come up with a solution, through the protein and the enzymes and everything else. So far we haven't seen the rats die. We didn't see an actual test on human beings, but perhaps we're off in the right direction. I don't think there has to be doubt there in terms of how the weapon's going to be able to be used against the Ishveni and not have to kill our own humans, which is great because obviously the Dornier didn't really give a lot to Tom Mason about how to use this weapon, what it does. It's almost one of those things when you have kind of the spy stories, whether movie or TV show, where like, here's your mission, here's your debriefing, you get the minimum amount that you need. This was, I would even say, less than the bare minimum. It's just like, here's your weapon, go attack the queen, come up with your own strategy, whatever you got to do it. And so that was quite interesting, and I thought it was the way they played it up. The Dornier are very much trying to avenge their genocide. They're not necessarily in the business of helping the humans and Tom Mason. I thought that was a great argument of Anne's to make, and certainly Colonel Weaver. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out, because an enemy of my enemy is my friend, yes, but at the same time, how far are we willing to really trust the Dornier, and how much obviously do they not care about us? So we'll ultimately see. Now let's talk about Pope, because Pope is a huge storyline in this, and we knew that we would get a major death in this season. We now hopefully this is the only one, but it's Pope. Now it's kind of strange because we didn't get final confirmation that Pope is actually dead. But certainly the explosion made it look like they're all gone, right? Pope and his entire militia. But it's kind of surprising because, I don't know, I just thought to have a character like Pope die, I felt we would have spent a little bit more time with the idea, not necessarily checking, okay, here's his body and stuff like that, but really, okay, what did Pope mean? Because it was very symbolic of what Pope and the direction that Pope went into and how psychotic he became, and to have him sort of end in that way, while smart of Tom Mason to do it in that way, it was very ruthless. It was very much, here's what needed to be done. I don't think there was any way to, for lack of a better term, re-trigger Pope back into a sanity. But I still thought, maybe it would have been played out like a Western showdown where it was Mason versus Pope and the best man would have won. This was very much use the elements that you have at your disposal, and don't try for Mason, it was kill as few of the innocent, quote-unquote, people as necessary. Now, obviously, Pope would very much disagree with who the innocent people were, as he says, but ultimately, the Pope army is gone, and so is Pope, and Tom lives. It's just, I'm still, for me, trying to process it, because it is such a heavy thing. I've grown to love Pope. Honestly, I have, and I didn't like Pope in the last episodes because of what he became, but I always felt that there was a redemption to Pope, and obviously Tom has felt that the redemption was there, and to know that isn't the case, it is a very sad feeling. And one of the things that I did feel that the distress calls that we heard early on, I thought was going to be a setup. Now, obviously, the setup works kind of in reverse, where Pope and his army come to the gates of the 2nd Massachusetts. But let me know what you guys ultimately feel about Pope. If I had one complaint about this episode, it would be that. Not the fact that Pope is gone, but just how it was handled. And maybe I just needed 30 more seconds. Maybe just like kind of one scene of, I don't know, but I just needed something for it to really have the weight. It almost got me like a big shock. All right, so we're at the last bit of at least of what I want to really talk about. Like I said, there's so many details in all of this that we can kind of nitpick and talk about, that I want to do that with you guys, but definitely offline. For me, yeah, I think it's just too, not minor, but a lot of stuff kind of going on there to be able to discuss all here. So let's talk about, we're ready. It's the morning. They're supposed to be the last to arrive at the meeting point in Washington, D.C. However, we assume Colonel Weaver caused the explosion, killing the communications thing or whatever, but it doesn't seem that way. Here we have all of our enemy aliens coming directly for Tom Mason, and I think that's directly related to what the events with Lexi. However, she was able to communicate to the Ishveni that Tom Mason was here, and then that's how it happened, and we'll see kind of ultimately where that ends up. Now, Lauren is the one who typically provides news and gossip. I don't have that for you today. However, there are so many articles out that if you really want, I'm about to get into predictions, but every article that is out there right now is all about, the penultimate episode and leading into the series finale and what we're going to get. So, if you like those theories, definitely check out. Just type in Falling Skies on Google, click the news tab, and you'll get all of those. So many things will be coming out this week that they're definitely worth checking out. So, and we'll try to bring those into the discussion of next week, right? But if there's if there's a particular theory that you read online, let us, and supports your case, let us know. Again, share that link. Don't be shy. So with that, let's get into my final predictions for the season finale.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
This is the last time predictions will be made for Falling Skies. We'll do a fun kind of prediction element for this season finale to see, we'll kind of predict where the characters will be in a couple of years. We'll do something like that, but obviously we'll never know. But next week, that's it. There's no more. It is what it is, and I think we'll spend the first, let's say, maybe 20 minutes in kind of the camp that we're at, and then we'll sort of move on from there. Or it could be very much that Tom... I mean, this ultimately comes down to Tom, right? And so whether or not the rest of the 2nd Massachusetts are able to get to Washington, D.C., I think as much as it would be nice to have their support there for the rest of the Mason militia, at the very least, I think Tom could definitely sneak off. You have the militia there, and then Tom is going to be able to do what he needs to do. Now, what does he need to do? We know that he comes kind of face-to-face. I think it's going to be very much a lot of action, and then we slow down to kind of these cut scenes of Tom communicating. I think we'll definitely get a huge reveal of some sort. I'm going to be interested to see how the Dornier really play into. It'll be interesting to see the Queen and what that means. And I'm most curious about Peru. What's going to happen with Peru? I don't think we're going to cut away and all of a sudden be in Peru. I think that's just going to be more over radio or something like that. But there's just a lot there. And we'll see. We'll see. The Volm. It'll be interesting to see how Cochise and his actions really come into play in next episode. I do think as much as Cochise kind of splintered off from the Volm, I think the Volm will do certain things to help out the humans, to take out the Ishveni. This is the final stand, so we'll ultimately see. I mean, there's just so much to look forward to, and we have about 6 days to get there. So, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for listening to me rant. I do appreciate it. I know you guys tune in every single week to hear my rants, or not necessarily rants, but obviously discussion. It's always better for me when we have Lauren LaGrasso, but hey, nonetheless, it's been fun for me to talk about this episode, to share it with you guys, and ultimately to share the experience of what Falling Skies is. So, in the meantime, as I mentioned multiple times, let me and Lauren know your fan theories. Let all the other fans of Falling Skies know your fan theories. The discussion is going to be so massive. But thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next Sunday to discuss the Season 5, not only finale, but the series finale in general. Thank you guys. See you guys then.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.